Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs. Today's guest, Mark Willis, is a man on a mission to help you think differently about your money, your economy, and your future. After graduating with 6 figures of student loan debt, he discovered a way to turn his debt into real wealth while everyone else was losing their retirement savings and home equity in 2008. Since then, Mark has helped hundreds of his clients take back control of their financial future and build their businesses with proven, tax-efficient financial solutions. In addition to his work as a certified financial planner, Mark is co-host of the Not Your Average Financial podcast, where he shares some of his strategies for investing in real estate, paying for college without going broke, and creating an income in retirement that you won't outlive. Mark works with people who want to grow their wealth in ways that are safe and predictable, to become their own source of financing, and to create tax-free income in retirement. Here to talk about all that and so much more, please join me in welcoming our guest, Mark Willis. Hey Mark, how are you, man?
Hey, good, Ryan. How are you?
So good. Thank you for taking the time to do the show. We're really grateful to have you here, especially, while some of us are in varying stages of lockdown, we appreciate how busy everyone has been. And we're really grateful to have you here.
Well, I'm a parent of a young child, so I already knew quarantine before it was cool.
Ryan's right in the thick of it with you.
Yeah. We've got 2 older boys here. So we've got a 3rd grader and a 7th grader. And so luckily both of them are pretty decent academic students. And so they've actually sort of finished up their school already, even though we got a couple extra weeks to go. So they are ahead of schedule and have begun summer a little ahead. But outside of that, just having, I keep joking that the biggest problem I've had during COVID is my new coworkers, because I'm so used to working from home myself. But now I have my wife, my 2 boys, and then my wife is a school teacher and has actually been teaching one of my son's football player friends here also. So we've had our own little schoolhouse going on here, and it's been crazy.
So the water cooler is now the chocolate milk cooler. Yeah, I gotcha. Cool. That's awesome.
Yep. So cool. So Mark, why don't we just kind of kick this thing off? Let's talk a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and what you do.
Sure. My name's Mark. I am a certified financial planner. I work with folks all over the country who, like you mentioned, are interested in building real wealth in turbulent times, such as we're in right now. I came from not from a financial background. I actually, went through undergrad and graduate school in a different field. And like so many of us, I found a different career, a different focus, a different passion as a result of graduating. It's almost like once you're free from having to focus on tests and papers and everything, you figure out what you want your life to be about, which is kind of cool. But fortunately / unfortunately, I also graduated in 2008 with my wife, and we graduated with, between us, mostly me, 6 figures of student loan debt. And I don't know if you guys remember anything about 2008, but man, it was a great time to be looking for work. No, I'm just kidding. Similar to today, right? It was a very hard job market. We didn't have a plan to pay off our debts. It was just this massive boulder on our backs. It felt like a mortgage that we couldn't enjoy the house on. It was just a massive payment every month. We kind of jokingly say that I married 2 women in college. One was my beautiful wife, and the other was Sally Mae. And so for us, it was like, wow.
At least it wasn't Freddie Mac.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I hear he's a nice guy, though. I don't know.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yeah. We did not need all that extra debt, although we certainly are happy for the education. It was also an education or a wake-up call to just exactly how are we going to take care of this problem, right? So it brought me front and center to our own financial duress, and had to get a plan together quick. So that got me very interested in personal finance. In the midst of the financial crisis of 2008, I worked at the time for a CPA she did a great job. She was actually nationally recognized, but she was losing people's money hand over fist in the markets, rightfully so. I mean, it was a bloodbath. And so, I remember being very interested in financial planning, working for this CPA, and thinking to myself, do I really want to spend my career building up all this paper wealth for folks only to have it vanish right before they retire? Some of these folks she would call were in their late 60s, early 60s, some of them saying, hey, Mr. Client, I know we've worked together for years. I know you've been saving, but you cannot retire anymore. And that was like, wow. So it did feel like I was being dropped into the front lines of a war. when we started working in the financial world. But yeah, that's sort of the context in which I got into the financial universe. So you might call me a post-recession planner, although I don't know if that's really relevant anymore now that we're back in a recession, very likely. So that's sort of where we came from.
So what was your degree in? What did you go to school for?
I actually got an undergrad and then a graduate degree at a seminary, and had a degree as a master's of divinity. So I learned Greek, I learned Hebrew, I jokingly say my favorite book of the Bible was the book of Numbers, because I ended up getting into finance. And my wife says that I'm a master's of divinity, so I make great chocolate. That's what she says about that. But I loved the experience. Man, I cannot tell you guys, getting your head on straight about life, theology, faith, philosophy, your principles, your values, getting that on straight first before you jump into the career, that meant the world to me. I wouldn't go back and change it. It's just how much debt do I really need to get into? And what's so interesting about it, and I'll hush about this, we didn't have a single financial planning class, either in high school, undergrad, or graduate school. I learned supply and demand and Econ 101, but I never learned how to budget. I never learned how to save for retirement. I never learned really much of anything in the way of money. And, for a lot of these degrees, even the MDiv, the Masters of Divinity, you're supposed to be running a church or something at the end of that. And how can you possibly run a church budget if they don't teach you how to run your own budget, personal budget? So I think there's a lot that we could learn as an educational system, the colleges and undergrads, but that's maybe for another podcast.
Yeah, no, I think you're so right, though. I mean, I all the way back to my education. I mean, the only time I received anything to do with accounting or bookkeeping or anything to do with finance was a brief stint that I spent in a vocational school between, starting the degree I thought I wanted and then going back and finishing the degree I thought I needed. And for one term or one semester, I took or 1 year, I guess I did it, went into a vocational school, and they actually taught me brass tacks, like how do you really get something done? And that 1 year was the most valuable bit of my education. All the stuff I learned in sort of general ed or going, in a standard academic route is useless at this point. There's nothing I took out of it. Yeah, and so I think it's so true.
In high school, the only class that I had as far as financial planning was they taught me how to write checks. They didn't tell me how to balance the checkbook. They told me how to, this is how you
learn how to spend the
check. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. That's kind of symbolic in so many ways, Mike.
Yeah, right. How to spend and not how to save. So I guess then talk to me a little bit about, where do we go from here? So I imagine, we've maybe addressed the underlying concern in that most people don't get a lot of training in finance. Many people probably don't even realize they've got a problem until they do, or it's too late, or they've got a big hole to dig out of. And so how do you recommend people start dipping their toe into finance? Where do we begin if we've got nothing on the plate?
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good question.
How did you begin? I mean, because you went through it. You weren't going as a financial planner. You came out of college, you had a bunch of debt. Now you're a financial certified planner.
Sure.
So maybe you would be a good case study.
How do you possibly give advice when you're underwater six figures? To me, I think the first thing is just, it's sort of like when you wake up in the middle of a movie. Have you guys ever fallen asleep and then you wake up halfway through the movie and you're like, what in the world is going on right now? Why did that guy just punch that other guy? Why did they kiss? What's going on here? I feel like many Americans, the world over really, but my context is the United States. So most of us feel like we woke up to money about half the way through the movie. And all of a sudden we're supposed to figure out what to do here. What's a credit card? What's a 401k? And we never really are told the characters or the plot or the conflict or hopefully the resolution. So we all just sort of wonder. It's sort of like that old Shakespeare quote, all the world is a stage and we're all actors thereon. But we just don't know what our role is. And we don't know what the game is. And we don't know who wins and who loses. You sort of learn by driving in the rearview mirror, as they say. So to start, I would say really just study this sucker to death. Figure out this thing called money. We're all in the money business. We're all in the financial industry. I might have a title after my name, but we're all participating in this system called the financial system. And either you can be used by it, or you can figure out the game and hopefully use it to your advantage as best you can. So that's the very first thing, is just figure out what our role is. If you know the players on the field, you know what to do next. If you know what's going on, you'll know what to do.
Yeah, no, I think that helps. It's funny. I think about just we do a lot of work over in Spain, for example. So I have two different sort of cultural outlooks on this stuff, and it's really interesting because my business partner, the person I do work with over there, is 10 years younger than me. So she's just just young enough that she's passing some milestones that I passed a long time ago. But here in the States, for example, by the time I was her age, I had 3 cars, I had a house, I had all the stuff, totally extended, totally all the debt I could eat, it was as bad as it could get. And like you said about waking up midstream or, in the middle of the movie, you don't know how bad it is until you got there. Every $150 payment doesn't seem like that big a deal until there's 10 of them. And then things start going a little bit sideways. In Spain, for example, they're really anti-debt. They don't go borrow money. They don't get credit cards in college. They don't, like all the things that we do here in this country. And so it is different to see how different people's takes are. Like in her case, she has a savings account. God, I couldn't even imagine what a savings account was at her age.
Right.
And I barely have one now.
Yeah.
And it was one of the things I really noticed as we were going into this coronavirus crisis was that, businesses and people in this country aren't really made for that kind of thing. Most of us spend what we earn, and that sort of discipline is carried all the way into the businesses we run. We spend every penny that comes in, and, maybe a few savvy guys saved some money, and obviously, nobody could have planned for this kind of, service outage. But nonetheless, a lot of people didn't survive early on because they were already living check to check at home and then living check to check at work. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's a really interesting idea how we start to resolve that stuff. I think you're right. Becoming familiar with finance is obviously a great place to begin. But where do you go? And how do you know who to talk to even when you do wake up in the middle of that movie and things have already gone sideways?
I find it's very helpful to learn some of the myths and problems, and then look for people that have been there before, even if they're just a few steps ahead. Guys, you may or may not share video on your show. If not, no big deal. I have a few graphs and charts. I didn't expect to share them.
Sure.
And we don't have to.
No, go right ahead.
This will go live. So feel free. Okay. Yep, feel free to share.
Well, okay. So I'm not going to, flood you, I hope, but there are a few pictures that might be valuable here. Is it okay? I have to hit share screen, but you might have to allow me to hit the share screen button on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead and give it a shot, and we'll see if it prompts him on the other end.
All right.
Sorry, I hope we aren't.
Oh, no worries.
Road bump here.
Not a problem, and I can even chop this up so it will be more streamlined.
And I'll try to share it to the audio only folks. I'll kind of talk through what we're seeing too.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything on my end that I need to allow anything.
On participants, if you find my name and then click more,
okay,
there'll be a button next to that says allow sharing, maybe. Does that show up in the list?
I am seeing spotlight video, allow record, rename. I'm not seeing anything as far as allowing
sharing
the screen.
Or anything.
Yeah.
Okay. It says here host disabled participant screen sharing. So we'll just maybe it's in your settings. No big deal. We don't have to share charts. Okay. I can talk through it.
All right.
Okay. So again, sorry guys. Your question was.
Basically, yeah, we were just trying to sort of understand where you would begin. So if we're in a situation where we've woken up in the middle of the movie, as you described earlier, and we were trying to, I guess make sense out of our situation, I think maybe you had an idea about that.
Sure. Okay, cool. Well, let me give you a few myths that we need to bust so that we can really start from the groundwork up. We don't want to misunderstand who the players on the field are or who the characters in the play are. So the first thing is to realize that this has been going on a very long time. We didn't just wake up in the middle of a crisis on whenever that was, back in late February, early March. We've been sick financially for much longer than we've had this coronavirus. The coronavirus might have been the pin, but there was a bubble that existed long before. In fact, way before you might even expect. I'm looking at a chart right now, and this is showing, for me, I'm looking at it here. It's a chart of when exactly the American family started living beyond what its dual income could allow. So, back in the 70s, we started having dual income households. And then in the 90s, we started to exceed what even two people could keep up with. So either we go back to child labor or we go into debt. That was kind of the choice, and we chose debt, maybe for a good reason.
Yeah.
But we're still very much way past our expenses. The other trouble is, average financial advisors love to put out feel-good information. Here's what I mean. Let's say that let's give a guy a name. Let's give this fictional guy, his name is John, let's say. And they'll sit John down in their investor office with a nice leather chair and maybe a latte. And they'll say to John, hey, John, you're 23 years old. You're doing great. If you just save $14 a day, you're going to be a millionaire by age 67. And that only assumes a 6% average rate of return. Well, look at this. The stock market does 10%, falling off a log. No problems. The trouble with that flawed advice is there's no compounding in the stock market. And I'm going to explain what I mean here as simply as I can. Let's pretend for a minute that I give you guys some sort of magical investment where you put your money in this year and it does incredibly well. Let's say that it doubles this year. So let's give you some numbers. Let's say you have $10,000 and you say, let's invest with Mark. And so you put $10,000 with me and I double your money this year. So 10,000 doubles to $20,000. With me on everything so far?
Mm-hmm.
So in year 2, you're like, wow, that was amazing. Let's stick with Mark. But then year 2 rolls around and whoops, I lost half of your life savings there. So your 20,000 drops back down to $10,000.
Your initial investment.
Great. Thanks, Mike. So after 2 years, how much money did you make?
$0.
Nothing.
But the math says you have an average rate of return of 25%. And I can advertise that I just earned you 25%. You went up 100 and then you lost 50, divide that by 2, and that's an average positive return of 25%. Mutual funds, the stock market, the entire Wall Street industry can advertise average returns. And I don't believe in average returns. They are misleading and they're a myth. And unfortunately, that's what many people hang their hat on, thinking that, I just put $14 a day in my brokerage account and I'm going to be a millionaire at age 67.
So I know it's a misquote. I think this has been attributed to Albert Einstein, but it says one of the most powerful forces in the universe is compound interest.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for us and why it is one of the most powerful, why it's so powerful as an investment tool?
It is so powerful if you don't break compound growth. And the problem with Wall Street is, again, the fancy word is beta, but what that means is the volatility of that return over a 30, 40-year period. I can tell you, hey, I just got you 25% average rate of return, but your real return is 0%. That's the number that typically is not advertised. And you did not compound your money if that was your experience, if you doubled it and then lost half of it. Now, most years are not that extreme in the stock market, but I'm looking at the actual growth, promised growth of the market. Let's say someone promised you, today you said, hey, I want to put my money in the market, and they say, well, the market on average does 10%, but let's make it nice and conservative and only give you a 7% projection. So that on their nice chart there, they show you this wonderful J-line curve. It's beautiful. It's slow at the beginning and then it grows compound forever, and it's beautiful. It's this up and to the right number, and it's an average return of 7%. But what they're not saying is that there's a lot of ups and downs along the way. I kind of say it this way. If you guys needed to go from your office straight home, that's a B line. Let's say you could even hop over streets and just fly there, right? As the crow flies, you can go straight from your office to your home. Does that take if you had a street that just went straight to your house, would that take less fuel or more fuel than all the back streets and side streets? And maybe you need to pick up some groceries, and maybe you need to drop the kids off. Maybe you need to pick up some dry cleaning on the way home. Which of those two routes makes or is more fuel efficient? Well, the straight line is more fuel efficient. But the trouble is our routes are always circuitous, right? We're always going back and forth and back and forth. And the same is true with our account balances. I always say, folks, like your stock market portfolio is not going to go in that wonderful, beautiful compound growth like Albert Einstein or whoever it was that said that. The only thing that truly grows in an uninterrupted compound way is something that never loses money. And there's only a few things out there in the universe, financial universe, that let us, on a guaranteed basis, never lose money ever again.
I used to think that was real estate, but looking at this current situation, I think there's a lot of landlords that are expecting some rent checks that aren't coming in. Can you talk about that and what it would be maybe a more secure investment other than real estate?
Yeah, you're right. We're seeing it again, right? Just 10 years after the last real estate crisis. Now, real estate's not bad. And by the way, Wall Street is not bad. I don't think anything is especially it should be excluded in your portfolio. There's reasons why these things exist. We're just using them for the wrong reasons. If it's a bag of clubs, golf clubs, we're trying our putter out on the fairway, and it's just not designed to do that. Right? It's for something else. Those tools like mutual funds or rental real estate, they're for specific things. So one of the best things anyone wanting to get their, financial head on straight can think of or ask yourself is, hey, what do I actually want my money to do for me? What is it I actually want it to do? Before you put labels on it, before we talk about real estate, before we talk about mutual funds, before we talk about dynastic trusts, whatever it is, just ask yourself, what sort of characteristics do I want my money to have? Because I know it sounds like brain dead obvious, but where you put your money makes it do different things. Where you put your money makes it act differently. A 401k will act different than a savings account or a real estate deal or, pick and choose. And there's literally 450 financial products out there with tons of millions of variations on those. So like asking yourself, before I get into all the minutia of this product or that strategy, ask yourself, if I could wave a magic wand, be Pope of money for the day, what kind of characteristics would I want my money to have? I did this with my wife and we sat down and we said to ourselves that same question. Like, I was going through my CFP training and I was getting introduced to all these different strategies. And we said to ourselves, well, what do we truly want? Because it sounds great over here. It sounds great over there. What do we need our money to do for us? We came up with a short list. I can give you my list and then love to get your feedback on that if you guys want.
Sure. Yeah.
So really, do what you want. It's your money. But what we found was really helpful was kind of creating a sort of a checklist. And feel free to start with this, guys, and make it your own after this episode if you want. But again, the question is, if I could design the perfect financial instrument for anything I needed in my financial life, what characteristics would be important to me? Some of the things I wrote down was a good, consistent rate of return. I wanted some sort of access to my cash for emergencies, for opportunities, with no costs or penalties. I didn't want to get slapped on the hand every time I needed my money. I wanted some sort of protection or guarantees that money would be there, not just a good rate of return, but like whatever I earned last year, I wanted it to be guaranteed and, locked in this year. I wanted it to be non-taxable if possible. I was just like, hey, let's just, what is this thing legal? I don't know, but I'm just writing it down right now, So I wanted it to be non-taxable. I didn't want to get taxed every year. I wanted to be able to get the money out as an income without taxes due in the future. I wanted it to be flexible. I didn't want a bunch of burdens on this thing, like where I was having to cough up cash for it every year, like real estate sometimes does, or other things sometimes ask you to do. I wanted it to be protected from lawsuits in case I ever got sued. You guys are business owners. You understand this. Real estate investors especially. I heard the other day that you have a 91%, or is it 94%? It's in the mid 90s, 90% chance of being sued twice over a 20-year period if you're a landlord or real estate owner.
Oh, wow.
That just
that's crazy.
Blew my mind. So it's not a matter of if, it's like when. And do we factor that lawsuit and those lawyer fees into our ROI on our real estate? But anyway, I wanted it to be creditor protected. I wanted it to avoid probate if I ever croaked. I wanted it to be able to leave to my family without having to go through the courts. Just get it straight to people I need to give it to. So that was kind of my list. Let me shut up for a minute. Any questions, or would you guys add anything to that?
I think you covered a lot of important parts as far as, your deferred taxes, your probate and stuff like that. I'm in the process of thinking this through right now myself. And there's so many different routes to go, so many different avenues, so many different things that I've thought about getting into stocks, but look at the stock market. I've thought about this, and it's almost like I have to go to school or college to learn how to manage my own finances and invest for retirement as a self-employed person. It's one thing if, you have a 9-to-5 and they're withholding your retirement and your health benefits and all this other stuff automatically. You just kind of forget about it. But as someone who's self-employed, it's on you. If you want to have any chance of retiring in the future, I kind of think I'm retired right now, so I kind of am winning that game. But
yeah.
you know what I mean? It would be nice to have some stability and have a game plan and all the stuff that you mentioned as far as the benefits of what you're trying to do. You almost have to set up a thing for each different thing that you want, and it's, to be honest with you, quite overwhelming. Can you maybe kind of break down like the tax deferred part, or how you can invest without having them take it all from you?
I was going to say, looking at this list, it's great, but it sounds like wishful thinking. Mm-hmm. Clearly it worked. So, let's talk about that transition. But yeah, no, it seems like you covered all the bases, just how do we get there?
Yeah. Well, okay. You're right, guys. It does sound overwhelming, like illegal, at least if it's real. But yeah, I wanted to really just put my wish list out there first and then go after the different products. And then you're right, guys, because I didn't care so much about the clubs and on this. I wanted the swing. If I had a choice between Tiger Woods golf swing or Tiger Woods golf clubs, I wouldn't care as much about the clubs. If I had the choice between, the best basketball shoes or the best basketball player, it's going to be the skills more so than the tools.
I don't know. Every time I lace up my Nikes, I feel like Jordan. So
just do it, man. Yeah. What's Bart Simpson is like, it's the shoes, right? Yeah, you're so right. And yeah, you probably could find, a Roth IRA to give you tax-free income in retirement. You could probably find a savings account to protect your principal so it's not lost. You could probably get, a really nice real estate deal to give you some nice ROI, return on investment. You could probably find, a private dynastic trust and a team of attorneys to help protect that money outside of probate. So, you could do all of that.
Can you define a dynastic trust? You've said it twice now, and it's something I've never heard of before.
I don't mean to, it's just a family multi-generational trust, the Vanderbilts,
self-banking and the Rockefellers. I actually wanted to go down this, and I have it as a question later on because I'm listening to Titan right now, Rockefeller's biography, and it's mind-boggling how much of a penny pincher he is and how he set everything up. He was talking about his oil barrels. They used to put 40 beads of solder around the edge of the barrels. And he asked the guy that was doing the barrels, what if you put 38? And he put 38 on it, and a few of them leaked. And then he figured, okay, let's try with 39. And none of the barrels leaked with 39 beads of solder around it. And it ended up saving him $4,000 or $5,000 a year, and compounding over the 20 years, that ended up being a lot of money at one bead of solder that changed it. And that's how meticulous he was. And he actually did the math to figure that out. And that to me is just insanity, but it shows why he's, Rockefeller and why he was the first billionaire.
Well, and the what if question is the best question you can ask. What if? That's a great beginner's mind. And I think, again, the question, what would it take to build the perfect financial vehicle before you get into, well, which is better, stock market or real estate? I think the what ifs are really where the gold is in those questions right there. So yeah, and to self-banking and what the Rockefellers did, they used a number of different instruments, but one of the things that they were very famous for using is a high cash value life insurance policy. That cash value life insurance policy was the centerpiece of their dynastic trust and of their family's wealth. And what they would do essentially is they became a family bank for themselves. So let me explain what a life insurance policy does if it's designed correctly, because it might be, for me, it filled a lot of these buckets pretty well. Life insurance, if designed the appropriate way, can be a pretty cool piece to the overall portfolio. So like, for one, a cash value policy, life insurance policy, is going to be accessible cash, meaning your money is your money. You can get it anytime you want. There's no restrictions. You're not having to wait till you're 59 and a half years old to get the money out. The policy's cash itself in there grows guaranteed every single year outside of the stock market on a pretty good basis. Like, we're not talking 20% a year. It's nice and conservative, middle single digits rate of return is pretty standard. But for me, it's like either it's this or it's a savings account for my safe money. And so this is going to way outpace a savings account, especially over time, like 500 times as much as my savings account is paying me. I don't know about you guys, but so it's middle single digit return. So it's pretty good there. The money does grow tax deferred, and you can get the whole thing out without any taxes due. Both principal and gains in the life insurance can be used and spent while you're alive, totally income tax free, kind of like a Roth IRA. It does avoid probate, so you're not going through probate. And it also, in every state's a little bit different, but every state offers creditor protection from life insurance. So you're not going to get somebody suing you and then taking your life insurance policy away from you or your kids for that matter. So to me, it made all the sense in the world to put some of my safe money in these policies. And for me, what that did was it allowed me then to control the environment where my money lived. The big bulk of my money was in these policies. And what it allowed me to do too was become my own banker. And, we used our policies then actually to pay off and buy back all of our student loan debt. So our student loan debt was coming down slowly as we were making payments. But then what we did was we plowed as much as we could into our policies, our life insurance policies, and they're just flooded with cash. This is not old-fashioned Dave Ramsey life insurance. This is like modernized, super efficient, grow every single month kind of cash value life insurance. And so it's being flooded with cash. And as our debt was coming down and as our savings and our policy was growing, we took a policy loan from our life insurance and bought back our debt. We took a loan and wrote a check to wipe out our student loans. And what was really amazing about this, and then I'll hush, I promise, is the policy itself continued to pay us the full guaranteed cash value and the dividend, even after we borrowed against the policy and wiped out the debt, as if we had not taken a loan, which is like mind-boggling. But it gave us that assurance that our retirement and our business and our family wasn't going to have to sacrifice just to pay off all this debt. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And you think about it too, like for a car loan or something like that, if you go and you get a $20,000 car and your interest rate, now they're offering the 0% interest rate for 80 months because they're just trying to sell cars. But for someone with decent credit, you're looking 7-8% or average. And if you have bad credit, you're up to 18 or 20%. And if you're thinking about it, if you could take that loan from your insurance policy where you're not paying that percentage, you're taking that 7 or 8% and paying yourself with it versus, paying it to someone else and giving in that income.
Mm-hmm. So. You're right. Yeah. Yeah. You're becoming the banker. You're serving your life. I mean, we're already in the banking business too. I mentioned that we're already in the financial industry. We're already participating in the banking world, even if we just pay cash for stuff. You mentioned a car. I'll mention this quickly. How do we buy stuff in life? Let's use a car as a good example. We only have a few options. Either we can go into debt to buy that car with a car loan. we can lease it, or we can pay cash. Those are my three main ways. So, with financing a car, what do you get? Well, you get a regular schedule of demanded required payments, and then you get an old car at the end of the deal.
When it's paid off, you go and buy another one and do the same thing over again.
You go right back into it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, this is how most Americans live, and myself too, had lived our entire lives. We just kind of live on that debt staircase, and we just keep falling back down. The other way to do it is to rent the car or lease it, and basically you get nothing at the end of the deal. It's 100% interest basically to lease a car, and then when you pay cash for cars, holy smokes, that's cool. That's better than maybe financing. But what's the problem with paying cash? Every time I spend money, like on a car or a cup of coffee, I lose the opportunity to grow that money ever again, breaking compound interest, Mike. Right? So every time I spend money, I'm actually financing that purchase. I'm actually taking away the growth I could have had on that money had I not spent it. The fancy word there is opportunity cost. But the trouble is, every time I pay cash, I'm still financing. So for me, that's the problem with paying cash. I keep breaking compound growth every time I buy a car, go on a vacation. So the fourth and best way, in my opinion, to buy stuff is to use a policy. If I use a policy to make a big purchase, if it's designed the right way, the policy does not stop compounding. It keeps growing. It keeps compounding like I never touched the money.
By policy, you're referring to insurance
yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Whole life policy. I call it a bank on yourself type policy. Yep.
Yeah, so maybe we can go into that a little bit more. I mean, obviously there are skeptics of this, and I think there are people who've been taken one way or another, with this whole idea or this concept, because I think you've got your range of people who are good and honest, and you've got your people who are looking to make their money on the back end.
We've actually had other guests on the show that are skeptics of it, and I brought this subject up in the past, and he was like, "Don't do it." So
yeah. Well, and what I liked though about the way you said it was when you introduced the idea of using this insurance policy, you introduced it as, a well-designed one. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's probably the differentiator between, maybe these bad idea versions that a lot of people do, and, maybe this cleaner version, or this one that checks more of these boxes for us. So can you maybe talk about the different types of policies out there, how to know a good one from a bad one, and how to make sure you're doing the right thing, right?
Yeah. Well, partly why I started this business and not just keep the policy to myself was I noticed a gap in the marketplace, and noticed that we could explore that gap and create a real niche for ourselves. So as a certified financial planner professional, I have to hold myself up to a certain fiduciary standard with our clients, which means I can't just go around telling everybody to do this. I can say, hey, it's a cool idea, but I don't know whether or not it works for each person I speak to until we've had a one-on-one sit-down talk and a listening session and crunch the numbers together. So this is not your grandpa's life insurance policy. I think I mentioned that a little bit, but whole life insurance has been around for 200 years, and the old-fashioned stuff was awesome. And in fact, half of all Americans kept their money in life insurance as of 1940. So what did they know that we forgot? Right?
Yeah.
So you want to ask yourself, who's giving you the advice, including me, but the guy or gal that said it's not a good idea. Think about where they're compensated and think about what their opinions are. And then just ask yourself, are they an expert in this or not? I would say the best thing you can do is work with a bank on yourself professional, someone who's been credentialed. Part of the reason why I got my CFP, and also for why I got what's called the Bank on Yourself Professional Authorization Program. It's a certification that took us several years for me and our advisors here to get. And what it means is it's sort of like it's a quality standard check where there's 10,000 life insurance agents in this country, and I wouldn't do business with 95% of the insurance companies out there, much less all the agents. There's a lot of really good people out there who just aren't educated, and then there's a few bad apples in there too, right? So my best recommendation is go seek out someone who's been educated and trained and held to a standard, like the Bank on Yourself professionals that we are, and there's several hundred across the country. What they do is they force you to kind of follow a certain process. I kind of liken it to when you're buying at the grocery store, you can get the all natural granola bar, which means sort of nothing, right? Or you can get a USDA organic stamped, granola bar, and you know exactly that it was held to a certain credential. So that's the shortest way I can explain it is, hey, work with someone who's gone through that process, who has to hold themselves to a certain standard, who'd be kicked out of their industry if they didn't hold themselves to that standard. That's what I would say do, just for sake of time and simplicity. Now we could get into the poorly designed policies I've seen, cash value that doesn't grow, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I wondered if maybe you could point out some of those kinds of red flags. I think especially for younger people who are starting to invest, the portion of money they have to invest is literally all they've got, right? And we've been talking a little bit about safety and security and making sure that money we're investing is as safe and secure as it can be. So if you've got limited income and maybe you decided that this was a way that you wanted to start investing as a youngish person, somebody trying to plan for the future, what sort of, obviously I think it's good advice what you mentioned, look for accreditation, things like that. But when it comes to the product they're actually trying to sell you, how can you really know? Because clearly there's going to be things that they're keeping off the table, the bit of money they're making on the back end or the whatever's, we may not really talk about that stuff. And so I wonder if there are red flags, maybe the difference between a good policy and a bad policy, right?
Good.
Safer policy versus a less safe policy.
Yeah, let me take a few of those there. That's great. Great questions, Ryan. So one of the best things I can say do is look for what's in the contract itself. You can trust the advisor, and that's probably a good place to start. Look for credentials, and that's another good place to start. But then you want to look under the hood. Was this a whole life insurance policy with dividends paid? That's a question I would look into. What was the commission paid to the agent versus what was the cash value in the first few years? If it's an old-fashioned whole life, 100% of your money in the first year is a commission check to the agent.
Wow.
So if it's more properly designed, that's going to be about a 70% pay cut to the advisor or agent, which might be why most insurance agents don't go around talking about this, by the way, because they get such a severe pay cut to design the policies for you with more cash value. If it's designed correctly, most of your money is going to go into something called the paid up additions rider. I didn't expect to talk about all this on the show today, but I'm glad you're asking, Ryan. It's a great question. Look to see if you've got a paid up additions rider on your whole life policy. If you have a policy called indexed universal life, I would be very cautious of setting anything like that up for banking, especially, but even more so for retirement income. It has, in my opinion, more expenses. The longer you keep an indexed universal life policy, it's a similar cash value policy to whole life, but it is designed to become more expensive as you age. And I try to avoid that if possible. Only whole life insurance is a level cost, and only whole life insurance allows you to borrow against it, and it continues to grow even on the capital you borrowed. Those are a few things. There's probably more too, but that's maybe something to get started on.
Well, yeah, I think, what I'm trying to understand, because, I don't know anything about this stuff really, is that I guess maybe, and it's just maybe my old way of thinking, right? When I think of an insurance policy, I think of something that's payable on death. This whole idea of being able to leverage it during life, I think is such an interesting concept. And I'm not entirely sure how it even works, So like we were talking earlier, about things like Roth IRAs and these other, tools that you can use. But it seems like you almost have to buy like an assortment of them so they sort of offset one another. Is it a wise choice to go all in on something like this, or is it still good to treat your whole life plan as one, or your policy as one aspect of your portfolio? So maybe you still have a little in stocks or a little in CDs or a little in whatever.
I do. I have a little in stocks. I don't have any CDs personally, but I've got money in real estate. I've got money in stocks. But the bulk of my real money, my real wealth, not paper wealth like stocks, bonds, mutual funds, but real wealth, contractual wealth is inside my policies. Those grow on a predictable schedule. I know exactly what they're going to be each year. That's not to say that everyone should do what I do or that everyone should have one of these policies. I don't think so. So you're right, Ryan. Term insurance is the kind of insurance that you just simply rent and leave to your family someday when you graduate.
And then when you turn 60, it doubles in premium and you can't afford it anymore. So you cancel and then you don't get the benefits out of it.
That's right. Yeah. 99% of term insurance never pays out. That's why it's so cheap. Why would they but why would it be cheap otherwise, right? It's free money to the insurance company. So they'll, as long as they can take something out of your pocket. I don't have a problem with term insurance. Again, it's a different club in the bag, but it's just renting. And you're right. The landlord's going to raise that rent on you as you get older.
So would it be almost a smarter investment to kind of just wait until you're 60 and start the policy then instead of paying into it your whole life? I mean, you're almost to that age. Why pay for it, when you're 30 until 60 or whatever, when you're, generally not going to die, and then just kind of pick it up as a side policy to leave something to your kids when you do die.
Hey man, I'm with you on that. If you can just look both ways before you cross the street for your entire life and never get sick and I think my thought is, like, if I knew I was going to die on a certain day, I'd forget all this whole life stuff and just get as much term insurance as I possibly could the day before. That'd be awesome. But in the meantime, not knowing my ultimate day, so to speak, again, I'm not doing this for the death benefit, although my wife would probably say otherwise. I'm doing this for how much wealth can we plow into these things like the Rockefellers did, and how little expense, commissions, fees can we get away with while keeping it all tax-free and on the right side of course, the insurance regulations. In my opinion, it's just a complement. And you could probably recreate this policy in 15 different financial products, Roth IRA, real estate for the dividend income, dividend paying stocks, term insurance. But would you be able to, cohesively manage that portfolio in a way that wouldn't maybe just be simpler in one product? Maybe or maybe not. I don't know.
Well, and so can you tell me, how does it work then? So like if you are using this, say, in retirement, I mean, are you actually drawing from the policy to pay your monthly bills, or are you borrowing against it, or how does that work?
Yeah. So, there's an example on one of our podcasts, episode 110. I'm looking at it here now. And there's a guy who puts in $1,500 a month into a policy for some odd years. He's like 34 or 5 when he starts, and he retires at age 70. His choice, right? You could step away like Mike already has done and retire early if you want to. But whenever you're ready, you can pull money out of this policy, either as a withdrawal or as a tax-free loan. And both the withdrawals of basis and the loans are 100% tax-free. In other words, you can take all the money out. This guy had $1.2 million in cash value, and he's living on it at $60,000 a year for the rest of his life, income tax-free.
That's amazing. Just to clarify, I still work. I just feel like I'm retired sometimes.
He's a man.
Corona retired.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. Go ahead and drop the name of your podcast. We haven't brought that up yet. I think you're like 140 episodes in, and I listened to a few of your episodes, and they're great.
Oh, thanks.
You want to tell people where they can tune in and hear that?
Well, that's meaning a lot coming from you, Mike. So the podcast is Not Your Average Financial Podcast.
Yeah. You actually just had a guest on, Christina Weiss. You guys were talking about how to live financially immune. Can you break that down for us? What do you mean by financially immune? Is it kind of recession proof?
Yeah. How can we pandemic proof our money? I mean, so we've lived, I think we've been financially sick way before the coronavirus hit us. And we've talked some about that on this episode here. But one of the things you can do to be financially immune, both as a business owner and as an individual or family, is, if you've got the fever, how do you got to lower your fever? And on a physical level, like, if you've literally got a fever, finding a way to get back down to a normal resting temperature is a healthy thing to try to do. And similarly, if you've got a burn rate in your financial life, either on a personal level or a business level, you're in trouble, So how can we, in this crisis is a great reminder to try to do this every so often, lower that burn rate? How can we lower our temperature in our business or our personal family finances? Do I really need 17 streaming services right now? Can I maybe get away with 1 or 2? Can I lower my other expenses? Can I negotiate with my landlord if I rent my commercial office space or my personal apartment or whatever? These are great moments to really work on our burn rate. That's one thing. I'd say also, let's increase our vitamins and minerals. Let's bring in healthy streams of income right now. So, you can You can look for brand new ways of making money that you couldn't make or didn't think to make before. One of the best quotes I've heard lately is, what does this crisis make possible for us? So, under one perspective, it's like, oh my gosh, how am I going to live? I can't believe this. We're under lockdown. But another perspective is, okay, let's take a breath. What does this crisis now make possible for us? And now you can maybe find some brand new streams of income you weren't even aware of or thinking to get involved with before.
A good example of that is the branded masks that are online right now. There's tons of people making a bunch of money off of masks that weren't even a thing in the last 3 months. So
let me tell you a quick story about that just for fun here. One guy, he's a client of mine. He borrowed from his life insurance policy. Okay. So he's got one of these policies set up. He's got several $100,000 in there. He started this a few years ago. So, he's been plugging away in there. He borrowed against the policy, and the policy keeps growing even on that capital there. But then he went and invested in a mask company that's gone bananas, 1,000% return or whatever. And the policy is just cooking over here doing fine on its own. So, and then once that investment pays off on the mask business, he'll repay the policy loan and do it again with some real estate or something else. You're right. It's all about opportunity. How do we view this crisis?
So, say for example, you're in a position where you're overextended. Your burn rate's 90%, and you're barely getting by with what you're making. Can you talk about maybe setting a budget and paying off incrementally those balances that you have? I've heard it kind of broken down as, hey, you start with your lowest bill that you have, pay it off first, take that payment, apply it to the next lowest bill, take that payment, apply it to the next lowest bill, and eventually you're paying off more principal than interest and building it up that way. Can you maybe break down a good budget plan and how to stick to it and kind of go from there?
Yeah, sure, Mike. Yeah, there's kind of two questions you asked there. At least I heard two questions. So
sure.
budgeting. No, that's all good, man. You probably, like many of us, it's like, all right, what do we do first here? Do I pay off my debt? Do I save? What do I do here? So, on budgeting, I always say, it really is sort of like, again, going back to education and lack thereof of finances, like it'd be sort of like we all got dropped into a world. Imagine we wake up from this life and we're in a cartoon world where the entire world, all that humanity is allowed to do in this cartoon world is play a musical instrument for a living. That's like the only way we can make money is like playing the flute or guitar or whatever.
I live that world.
Yeah, right. You'd be like the king. You'd be the god of that world, man. Like,
Not now.
But like, all right. So whatever we do, all we can do is work that instrument. Now, would you guys be like a little dumbfounded if you dug a little deeper into this cartoon world and realized that for 12 years of undergrad or 12 years of education plus college plus graduate school, never once did the teachers ever tell you to pick up an instrument or pluck around or like, try to work out an arpeggio or anything? Like, wouldn't that be a little weird? And there'd probably be 1% of those cartoon people who would figure it out, look ahead, say, all right, wow, looks like everyone successful is playing a musical instrument. I need to figure this thing out. But most of us would just, sort of stumble into the reality. All we can, we've learned all this useless information, and now we have to play that instrument. So I'd say a budget is an instrument that we have to learn to play. It's going to feel fake. It's going to feel hard at the beginning. You're going to fail. I'm going to fail. All of us will fail the first 6 months of trying to keep a budget. But over time, it becomes like a musical instrument where it becomes actually not constricting, but it becomes freeing, I would say. You're actually more able to feel more free when you have a strategic spending plan. So that's budgeting. And we have we just recently did an episode on the 4 rules of budgeting, which I'd recommend folks check out if they want to. Recently, just a few weeks ago. As to paying off debt, that's a totally different conversation. There'd be a really cool conversation there too, but maybe that's enough for now.
Cool. Well, yeah, no. So, as you can tell, we could go on for hours and hours with this, but as we're getting to the end of this thing, can you just tell our listeners where they could learn a little bit more about you, where they could find you online, Obviously, the podcast is one place, but where else can people find you, learn more about what you're doing, or maybe inquire if they've got questions?
Thanks. Yeah, we've got our main place is our website, notyouraverageFinancialPodcast.com. And if you guys want to date me, you can check out some of our podcasts there. We did do a pretty cool recent episode on, it's called the debt snowball versus the debt snowbank method for paying off your debt. So I'll leave the cliffhanger on that, Mike, on your other part of the question.
You can't leave us with a cliffhanger like that. Just a brief overview. What's the difference between a snowball and a bank?
Snowball, you're just throwing at your smallest balance first, like you mentioned, and you stick with $1,000 in the savings account while you're paying off all that debt. A la what Dave Ramsey likes to talk about on his radio show. Great guy, but he might or might not have the whole corner on truth. And so the snow bank, you're funding your minimums on your debts, you're keeping current, but everything else that you can possibly comfortably save goes into your whole life policy, the snow bank. Get it? And as you build up wealth in your snow bank, you're taking and borrowing against that policy and you're wiping out your debts one at a time. Meanwhile, the policy is continuing to grow and accumulate as if you had not been taking all those loans. So you're building an asset for yourself. When you do the snowball method, the Dave Ramsey way, all you do is you get back to net zero. You're just finally crawling and scratching your way back to the starting line of your life. And while that's okay, that's great, I don't want to get on a radio show and scream, I made it to the starting line of my life. I want to say, I'm better than debt-free. I want to be the banker. That's better than debt-free, in my opinion. So the snowball method is great. The snow bank method, for my wife and I, it's how we used it to pay off all of our student loan debt. And it's going to give us an additional $250,000 in our retirement that we would not have otherwise had using the same money to pay off our debt the snow bank way. So that's I revealed the curtain on that cliffhanger. Sorry, guys. You get a sneak peek of next week's episode, I guess. But anyway,
great.
notyouraverageFinancialPodcast.com. Ryan is the website to check out, notyouraverageFinancialPodcast.com.
That's great. Well, and I can see it looks like episode 139 was the budget discussion that we were just having. And, obviously, I think that there's some really great information there that might be able to extend this conversation a little longer because there's just so many different corners and different things to solve given everybody's different situations. So I greatly appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much for doing this. Pleased to have you. And thanks to everybody who tunes in and listens every week. And we'll see you next time.